I accidentally spilled coffee on my wife's brother, who became head of operations 2 days ago. Do you know how expensive my suit is? You're fired, he screamed. I headed to the lobby to meet the investor as scheduled. Ready for our meeting? He asked. I smiled. Sorry, he just fired me. The investor chuckled, held up his phone showing the security footage. Is this the guy who fired you? What happened next destroyed 3 careers and exposed a decade of lies. My name is Nathan Pierce. I'm 38 years old, and until this morning, I was the Vice President of Strategic Development at Ashford Tech Solutions, one of the fastest-growing software companies in Silicon Valley. I'd been with the company for 12 years, starting as a junior developer and working my way up through pure determination and results that spoke for themselves. I built the partnerships that turned us from a 20-person startup into a company valued at $800 million. My wife Rebecca and I had been married for 8 years. We met at a company retreat where she was working as an event coordinator. Beautiful, smart, and from what I thought was a normal middle-class family. Her brother, Kyle Thornton, was 5 years younger than me, freshly graduated from business school with an MBA from a decent program, but nothing that screamed executive material. He'd been working at various tech companies for the past few years, never staying anywhere longer than 18 months. Mediocre performance reviews, no major accomplishments, but somehow always landing on his feet. The problem started 3 weeks ago when our CEO, Douglas Whitmore, announced a major restructuring. Doug was 67, ready to start stepping back, and he'd been grooming his successor for months. The entire executive team had been working on a massive deal with Blackstone Capital, a private equity firm that wanted to inject $2 billion into our company to fuel aggressive expansion. I'd been the lead negotiator on our side, spending 9 months building the relationship with their investment director, Jonathan Reeves. Then, Rebecca started her campaign. It was subtle at first, dinner conversations where she'd mention how Kyle had some great ideas for operational efficiency, how he'd worked at 3 different tech companies and understood the industry from multiple angles, how it would be nice to have family involved in the business now that we were getting serious about growth. Nathan, honey, Rebecca said one evening while we were having wine on our deck. Don't you think Kyle would be perfect for a management position at Ashford? He's been looking for something more stable, and you know how talented he is. I'd looked at her over my wine glass, studying her face. Rebecca had this way of presenting things that made them seem reasonable, even when they were anything but. Beck, I love your brother, but management positions aren't handed out based on family connections. He'd need to interview, prove himself, show that he has what it takes. Of course, she'd said quickly. I'm not suggesting nepotism. I just think he'd be a great fit. And with the Blackstone deal coming through, you're going to need good people in key positions. What I didn't know was that Rebecca had been working on Douglas directly, inviting him and his wife over for dinner parties, building a relationship with his assistant, positioning herself as the supportive corporate spouse who understood the pressure Doug was under. She was playing a long game, and I was too focused on closing the Blackstone deal to see it. The announcement came during our Monday morning executive meeting. Douglas stood at the head of the conference table looking pleased with himself. I want to introduce our new head of operations, Kyle Thornton. Kyle comes to us with experience from 3 major tech companies, and he's going to help us streamline our processes as we prepare for rapid expansion. I felt my stomach drop. Head of operations. That was a C-suite adjacent position, reporting directly to the CEO. Kyle would be my equal in the organizational hierarchy, overseeing the operational side while I handled strategic development. But Kyle had never managed more than a small team. He'd never handled budgets in the millions. He'd never dealt with the complexity of a company our size. Around the table, I saw the same confusion on my colleagues' faces. Sarah Chen, our CFO, looked like she'd been slapped. Marcus Rodriguez, our CTO, was staring at Douglas like he'd lost his mind. We'd all worked our asses off to build this company, and now the CEO was installing his VP's brother-in-law in a critical leadership position. Kyle walked in wearing an expensive suit, probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, with that confident smirk I'd seen at family gatherings when he'd had too much to drink and started bragging about his accomplishments. He shook hands around the table, lingering on mine. Looking forward to working with you, Nathan. Family and business, best of both worlds, right? I forced a smile. Welcome aboard, Kyle. The first 2 days were a disaster. Kyle immediately started making changes without consulting anyone, reorganizing reporting structures and questioning decisions that had been carefully made over months of planning. He canceled meetings I'd scheduled with key partners, claiming they weren't a priority. He sent emails to the entire company about new policies without running them past the executive team first. But the real problem was his attitude. Power had gone straight to his head. Kyle started treating people like they were beneath him, snapping at assistants, dismissing concerns from department heads, and generally acting like he was the smartest person in every room. The respect I'd spent 12 years building with our team was evaporating because I was connected to this guy. By Wednesday morning, I was exhausted. I'd been up until 2 a.m. preparing for my 9 a.m. meeting with Jonathan Reeves. Hey, the chat. Blackstone deal was entering its final phase, and Jonathan was flying in from New York specifically to discuss the investment terms. This meeting was critical. If it went well, we'd sign the deal by the end of the month. If it went poorly, 9 months of work would evaporate. I grabbed coffee from the break room, reviewing my notes on my tablet as I walked. The presentation was solid, the numbers were perfect, and Jonathan trusted me. This should be straightforward. I turned the corner toward the executive offices, still reading my tablet, when I collided with someone. The impact wasn't hard, but my coffee cup tilted, and about a third of the hot liquid splashed onto the person I'd bumped into. I looked up and realized my mistake immediately. Kyle was standing there, coffee dripping down the front of his suit, his face turning red with rage. "Are you kidding me?" he shouted, loud enough that heads turned in offices down the hallway. "Do you know how expensive this suit is?" "Kyle, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I was looking at my tablet and—" "Sorry? Sorry?" He grabbed my arm, hard enough to hurt. "This suit cost $4,000. Tom Ford custom tailored, and you just ruined it with your carelessness." I pulled my arm free. "It was an accident. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, obviously. But right now I need to get to my meeting with Jonathan Reeves. The Blackstone investor is waiting in the lobby." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "You think a meeting is more important than taking responsibility for your actions?" "Kyle, it's coffee. It'll come out with dry cleaning. But Jonathan flew in from New York specifically for this meeting, and I can't keep him waiting." "No." Kyle stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're not going anywhere until you understand something. I'm head of operations now. That means I outrank you. And when you disrespect me by ruining my property, you face consequences." I stared at him. "You're serious right now? You're pulling rank because of an accidental coffee spill?" "You're fired." The words hung in the air. Around us, assistants had stopped working. Sarah Chen was standing in her office doorway, her mouth open in shock. Marcus Rodriguez had come out of his office, looking between Kyle and me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What did you just say?" I asked quietly. "You heard me. You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Kyle pulled out his phone and started typing, presumably messaging the security team. "Pack your office. Leave your key card and laptop with HR, and maybe next time you'll watch where you're going." I looked at this kid, because that's what he was, a 33-year-old kid who'd been given power he hadn't earned, and I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not desperation. Something closer to relief. "Okay," I said calmly, "if that's your decision." Kyle blinked, clearly expecting me to beg or argue. "That's it? You're not going to fight? This? No point. You're head of operations. You have the authority. I'll collect my things and go." I walked to my office, Sarah following close behind. She shut the door and grabbed my arm. "Nathan, what the hell just happened? He can't just fire you over a coffee spill. This is insane." "He just did, though." I opened my desk drawer and started pulling out personal items. Douglas gave him the authority, and he's using it. This is going to destroy the Blackstone deal. Jonathan Reeves has been working with you for 9 months. He trusts you. If you're gone, there's no deal. I looked at her. "That's not my problem anymore, Sarah." "Nathan, don't do this. Fight back. Go to Douglas. Make him understand what Kyle just did." "You think Douglas will choose me over his golden boy? Kyle's been here 2 days and he's already firing VPs. That tells you everything about where the power is." I packed my personal items into a box while Sarah watched, tears forming in her eyes. 12 years of my life, reduced to a cardboard box of picture frames and office supplies. When I finished, I walked out of my office for the last time. Kyle was waiting in the hallway with 2 security guards. He'd changed into a spare shirt, but was still wearing the coffee-stained pants. "Gentlemen, please escort Nathan off the premises. He's no longer employed here." I handed my keycard to one of the guards, both of whom looked uncomfortable with the situation. They'd known me for years, had chatted with me every morning when I arrived. Now they were walking me out like a criminal. The walk through the office was surreal. People stopped working to watch. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. A few looked scared, probably realizing that if Qley could fire me over a coffee spill, their own jobs weren't secure either. We took the elevator down to the lobby. That's when I remembered Jonathan Reeves was waiting there for our meeting. As the elevator doors opened, I saw him standing by the windows, checking his phone. When he looked up and saw me being escorted by security, confusion crossed his face. "Nathan?" Jonathan walked over, glancing at the security guards. "What's going on? Are you okay?" "Jonathan, I apologize, but I'm going to need to cancel our meeting." "Cancel? We've been planning this for weeks. The final terms, the signing timeline, everything's ready to go." I smiled, and it felt genuine for the first time that morning. "I just got fired. About 5 minutes ago." Jonathan's eyes widened. "You're joking." "Wish I was. The new head of operations decided I was expendable." "The new head of operations?" Jonathan pulled out his phone and started scrolling. "I wasn't informed of any changes in the executive team. That's a material change that should have been disclosed during our due diligence process. He was appointed Monday, family connection to one of our VPs, has an MBA and about 6 years of mediocre experience. Oh, and he just fired your primary contact over a coffee spill." Jonathan's expression went from confused to furious in about 3 seconds. He pulled up something on his phone, then showed me the screen. It was security footage from the hallway camera, showing my collision with Qley, the coffee spill, and Kyle's aggressive response. Douglas must have given him access to the security system already. "Is this the guy who fired you?" Jonathan asked, his voice tight. I looked at the footage showing Qley grabbing my arm, shouting in my face, pulling rank over an accident. "That's him." Jonathan made a call. "David?" "Yeah, it's Jonathan. I need you to pull the Ashford deal immediately. Complete halt on all negotiations." "No, I'm serious. I'll explain when I get back to the office, but we're done here." He hung up and looked at me. "Nathan, I've been in venture capital for 20 years. I've seen a lot of stupid moves, but this might be the stupidest. They just fired the only person I trusted at that company over a coffee spill, and they installed some nepotism hire in a critical position without informing their major investor. That's not how serious companies operate." "I appreciate that, Jonathan. Where are you going now?" "Home, I guess. Figure out my next move." "Have lunch with me first. We need to talk." The security guards looked at each other, unsure if they should still be escorting me out. Jonathan made the decision for them. "Gentlemen, Nathan is no longer on Ashford premises. He's in the public lobby. You can go back to your posts." They left, probably grateful to be out of the situation. Jonathan and I walked to a restaurant across the street, a quiet place where we'd had several informal meetings during the negotiation process. Over lunch, Jonathan laid out exactly what would happen next. Blackstone was prepared to invest $2 billion into Ashford. That investment was contingent on several factors, but the most important one was stable, competent leadership. You were a major part of that equation, Nathan. Your track record, your relationships, your strategic vision. Without you, the deal falls apart. Douglas won't see it that way. He thinks Qley can step into my shoes. Then Douglas is delusional. I've been watching that kid for 2 days, since he started. He's already alienated half the executive team, made unilateral decisions without consultation, and now he's firing key personnel over personal grievances. That's not leadership. That's ego. I took a sip of water. So what happens now? Now, I make some calls. Blackstone has been looking at other investment opportunities. Companies that actually know how to manage talent. Companies that don't fire their best people over coffee spills. He leaned forward. "Nathan, what if I told you I could help you start over? Not at Ashford. Somewhere better." "I'm listening." "There's a company called Vertex Solutions. Small right now, maybe 50 employees, but they have incredible technology. They've been looking for someone to handle their strategic development and partnership building. Someone exactly like you. If you're interested, I can make an introduction today." I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. "I'm interested." Jonathan made a call right there at the table. 20 minutes later, we had a meeting scheduled with the Vertex CEO for that afternoon. Meanwhile, back at Ashford, the consequences of Kyle's decision were starting to cascade. Sarah Chen had immediately gone to Douglas's office to explain what happened. When Douglas heard that Jonathan Reeves had witnessed my firing and pulled the Blackstone deal, he apparently went pale. "What do you mean he pulled the deal?" Douglas had asked Sarah. Jonathan saw Nathan being escorted out by security. He asked what happened. Nathan told him he'd been fired, and Jonathan called his office immediately to halt all negotiations. "Douglas, we just lost $2 billion because Kyle fired Nathan over a coffee spill." Douglas had tried calling Jonathan, but the calls went to voicemail. He tried emailing, but got an auto-response. The Blackstone deal, which had been 90% complete, was dead. 9 months of work, countless meetings, hundreds of hours of negotiation, all destroyed in 5 minutes because Kyle couldn't handle an accidental coffee spill. By lunchtime, word had spread through the entire company. The mood shifted from confused to angry. People started sending their resumes out. Key employees started taking calls from recruiters. The company's Glassdoor rating dropped by 0.5 point in a single day as current employees left anonymous reviews warning others about the toxic new leadership. Kyle, meanwhile, was in his office acting like nothing had happened. When Sarah confronted him about the Blackstone deal falling apart, he'd shrugged. If they pulled the deal over one VP leaving, they weren't serious investors anyway. We'll find other funding. Other funding? Kyle, that was a $2 billion investment. Do you understand what that means? That money was going to fund our expansion into 3 new markets, hire 200 new employees, and upgrade our entire infrastructure. You just destroyed the company's future because Nathan spilled coffee on your suit. He disrespected me. I don't tolerate disrespect. Sarah had walked out of his office and gone straight to her own office to start making calls. By the end of the day, she'd lined up 3 job interviews at competing firms. Marcus Rodriguez did the same. Within a week, half the executive team would be gone. My meeting with Vertex Solutions went better than I could have hoped. The CEO, Jennifer Walsh, was 42, brilliant, and had built her company from the ground up with a revolutionary approach to cloud-based security. She'd been looking for someone to help scale the business, but hadn't found the right fit. "Jonathan speaks very highly of you," Jennifer said during our meeting. "He said you're the best partnership developer he's worked with in 20 years. Jonathan's been a great partner. I'm sorry things ended the way they did at Ashford. From what Jonathan told me, you handled an impossible situation with grace. That tells me a lot about your character." She slid a folder across her desk. "This is our current position. 50 employees, $30 million in revenue, and technology that's about 5 years ahead of our competitors. What we need is someone who can build the relationships and partnerships that will turn us into a major player." I reviewed the documents. The technology was impressive, genuinely innovative. "You have something special here." "I know. What I don't have is someone who knows how to sell that story to the right people. Someone who can open doors with major clients and investors. Someone like you." "What kind of role are you offering?" "Chief Strategy Officer. You'd handle all external relationships, partnerships, and strategic planning. Full executive compensation package, equity stake, and autonomy to build your team however you see fit." I looked at Jennifer. "When can I start?" "Monday work for you?" "Monday works perfectly." We shook hands, and just like that, I had a new job. Not just a new job, a better job. Vertex had the kind of potential that Ashford had possessed 10 years ago, before politics and ego got in the way of good business. That evening I went home to find Rebecca waiting for me. She'd heard about the firing from Kyle, who'd apparently called her immediately to gloat. "Nathan, what happened?" she asked, but there was something in her voice. Not concern. Calculation. "Your brother fired me over a coffee spill. Kyle said you were insubordinate, that you refused to take responsibility for damaging his property." I set my box of personal items on the kitchen counter. "I spilled coffee on him accidentally. I apologized and offered to pay for dry cleaning. He decided that wasn't enough and fired me on the spot." "Well, maybe if you'd been more careful." "Beck, stop." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. "You've been working on this for weeks, haven't you? Getting Douglas to hire Kyle, positioning him for power. This was always the plan." She had the grace to look guilty. "Kyle deserved a chance. He's talented, and he's family. He's mediocre, and now he's destroyed the company's future. The Blackstone deal is dead. Jonathan Reeves pulled the entire $2 billion investment when he saw me being escorted out by security. Rebecca went pale. That's not true. Kyle said the deal was still on track. Kyle is delusional. Jonathan watched your brother fire me over a coffee spill and decided that's not the kind of company Blackstone wants to invest in. And he's right. But the stock options, the equity package Douglas promised us when the deal closed, there it was. The real reason Rebecca had been pushing so hard for Kyle to get hired. She'd been counting on the Blackstone deal going through, expecting our equity stake to be worth millions overnight. Kyle's position was supposed to secure his own equity package, and together we'd all cash out when the company went public. Those stock options are worthless now, I said quietly. The company you tried to use for personal gain is probably going to collapse within a year. Nathan, you need to fix this. Call Jonathan, explain what happened, get him to reconsider. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not fixing the mess your brother created. I already have a new job, starting Monday at a company that actually values competent leadership. Rebecca stared at me. You got a new job already? It's been one day. Jonathan Reeves introduced me to Vertex Solutions. I'm their new chief strategy officer. Better title, better company, better future. But what about Kyle? If Ashford fails, his career is over before it started. I picked up my box of personal items. That's not my problem, Beck. You and Kyle made your choices. Now you get to live with them. I walked to our bedroom and started packing a suitcase. Rebecca followed, panic starting to creep into her voice. Nathan, where are you going? Hotel for tonight. Tomorrow I'm looking for an apartment. This marriage is over. Over? You can't leave me because of one disagreement about Kyle. I turned to face her. This isn't about one disagreement. It's about you prioritizing your brother's undeserved advancement over our relationship. It's about you manipulating Douglas behind my back. It's about you counting on corporate equity packages instead of believing in what we'd built together. You stopped being my partner and became Kyle's accomplice. The divorce papers were filed the following week. Rebecca tried to fight it, claiming I was abandoning her during a difficult time. But the prenup we'd signed was clear, and the fact that she'd been actively working to benefit her family at the expense of my career didn't help her case. At Ashford, things got worse. Douglas tried to salvage the Blackstone deal by firing Kyle and offering me my job back with a raise. I declined. Sarah Chen had already accepted a CFO position at a competitor. Marcus Rodriguez was gone 2 weeks later. The company that had been valued at $800 million was now hemorrhaging talent and struggling to close deals without the relationships I'd built. Kyle lasted 6 weeks as head of operations before Douglas fired him. Apparently, the board of directors had had enough of his incompetence and demanded changes. Kyle tried to find another position in tech, but word had spread about what happened at Ashford. Nobody wanted to hire the guy who'd destroyed a $2 billion deal over a coffee spill. Meanwhile, Vertex Solutions was thriving. I'd brought in 3 major clients in my first month, and Jennifer had been so impressed that she'd given me an additional equity stake. Jonathan Reeves had connected us with several potential investors, and we were in talks with a venture capital firm about a $500 million funding round. 6 months after getting fired, I was sitting in my new corner office at Vertex, reviewing partnership agreements, when my assistant buzzed me. Nathan, there's a Kyle Thornton here to see you. He says he's family? I hadn't spoken to Kyle since that morning in the Ashford hallway. Send him in. Kyle walked into my office looking nothing like the confident executive who'd fired me. His suit was off the rack, his hair needed cutting, and he had the desperate look of someone who'd burned every bridge and was now trying to swim back across the river. Nathan, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Thanks for seeing me. What do you want, Kyle? I came to apologize. What I did, firing you over that coffee spill, it was wrong. I let the power go to my head, and I made a terrible decision. I leaned back in my chair. You destroyed a $2 billion deal, drove away half the executive team, and probably ended Ashford as a viable company. An apology seems insufficient. I know. I've been trying to find work, but nobody will hire me. My reputation is destroyed. Rebecca told me you're doing really well here, and I thought maybe you could help me get a position. Entry-level anything. I just need a chance to rebuild. I looked at him for a long moment. No. Nathan, please. I made a mistake. Don't you believe in second chances? I believe in consequences, Kyle. You had power you didn't earn, and you used it to hurt someone who'd never done anything to you except accidentally spill coffee. That's not a mistake. That's character. And I don't want someone with your character anywhere near my company. Kyle's face went red. This is because of Rebecca, isn't it? You're punishing me because your marriage fell apart. My marriage fell apart because your sister chose to manipulate her way into corporate politics instead of being an actual partner. You're unemployable because you proved to the entire industry that you can't handle responsibility. Neither of those things is my fault. So that's it? You're just going to let me fail? I stood up. Kyle, you already failed. I'm just not going to help you pretend otherwise. Now get out of my office. He left, slamming the door behind him. I went back to my work, feeling nothing but relief that I'd escaped that family when I did. A year later, Vertex Solutions closed a $750 million funding round. Jennifer made me a partner in the firm, and we started planning our expansion into international markets. The company that had been worth $30 million when I joined was now valued at close to $2 billion. Ironically, the same amount Ashford had lost when Kyle fired me. Ashford never recovered. They eventually sold to a larger competitor for a fraction of their previous value. Douglas retired in disgrace. Kyle moved back in with his parents and last I heard was working at a call center. Rebecca tried to reach out several times after the divorce was finalized, claiming she'd made a mistake and wanted to try again. I never responded. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. The story made its way around Silicon Valley as a cautionary tale. Several business schools even used it as a case study in what happens when companies prioritize nepotism over competence. I've been asked to speak at a few of them, sharing the experience and what I learned from it. The truth is, getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me from a company that had stopped valuing merit, from a marriage that had become transactional, and from the burden of trying to fix other people's mistakes. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of something better. You just have to be willing to walk through the fire to get there. If you found this story valuable, if it reminded you that competence and character still matter in business, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when losing something turned out to be gaining everything. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories about justice, redemption, and the power of walking away from people who don't deserve your loyalty. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something better than they could ever imagine, and doing it without them.